fingers like on Jupiter in Mars, and other words, hold my hand.
How's everyone? Pizza, beer, wine? Oh no, it wasn't any beer and wine, I'm sorry. Well, a few people could use it right about now, but first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Darnell Wyrick, and thanks so much for having me. And I want to just say, what a great turnout. I'm looking through the audience here, and I see a lot of youth in the community here as well, too. And really, my admiration for you guys for coming out, taking time away from your homework to be a part of this evening, okay? It's very important. So the whole political, attitude that we have at a young age really carries over into when we become adults. So I'd like to, first of all, thank everyone for attending, taking time out of this evening. And I would also like to thank the Fairview Community Church for letting us host it here in their facility. And then, most importantly here, I want to actually make it a real significant contribution to Sandy. Sandy has had a dream about this, and I'm just glad to see that it turned into fruition, and hopefully that we've got the momentum going here to carry this on ongoing. So a big round of applause for Sandy for her work. So when Sandy came to me and asked that I, consider moderating this, I was kind of inquisitive about what was happening, and she was very vehement about making sure that this evening was about communication and breaking down barriers as far as that's concerned. I think most of the time we put up our own barriers in life, and if we can come together and to respect each other from one accord, no matter what side of the aisle that you sit on, that's important. And when you cast out people just because of their political stance or their actions, unfortunately, then I think that doesn't say very much about that individual who's casting dispersion. So we're all human beings, and we should all be treated equally. So with that, I'd like to also ask that tonight these candidates are here primarily for one purpose, and that is to really help bring about some communication and to help you to get to know them in the community for what their stances are relative to the Newport Mesa Unified School District, because we all have a vested interest in that as far as that's concerned. So it's really about a communication. Rather than sitting around and squabbling back and forth with each other, I think our overall objective should be about bringing some resolutions to some of the issues that are facing our community as well as the school district. Because when that is improved, everyone wins. Would you not agree? Well, thank you very much. So let's give a big round of applause for all of our candidates here who Well, the great thing is that it's not a hot seat, so let's not look at this in terms of a major contest. You will have your inroads out there in the community when it comes times to the campaigning, and all of you have a viable opportunity to make sure that you're successful no matter what happens in terms of the overall outcome. So one thing Sandy indicated during this discussion, again, I'll emphasize, it is about communication, okay? And hopefully everyone will walk away from our meeting this evening with some information and knowledge that you didn't have when you came into the meeting. So with that, I'd like to say that today's political environment really just is kind of a very shaky road for the most part. The discourse that we currently have is pervasive, and I would honestly say to you that if we can't respect each other, as I said before, then all is lost, because I think we'll continue to spiral downhill. And as you can see it now in communications back and forth, sometimes we're afraid to even mention what party we are affiliated with because of concerns for, ad hominem attacks being cast upon us. And that's what we don't want this evening. No name calling, no fighting, no squabbling. We're here to have fun. And I'm here to make sure that that happens, okay? With that, I'd like to go ahead and let you know that I will introduce the candidates, and they'll have about 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves, okay? So for the candidates running today, I would like to, Michelle Murphy for Area 2.
Yes.
Okay. Ashley Anderson, Area 7. Michelle Barto, Area 5. Okay. Gina Nick, Area 4. And I'm sorry, candidate, I didn't get your name. Kim? What was it? All right. So with that, I'd also like to make sure that I identify the panel here, and that from that standpoint, the panel is going to consist of Patrice Apodaca.
That was really close. Patrice Apodaca.
Apodaca. Thank you. My apologies. Mine gets kind of torn apart all the time, and I just say yes. Okay. Colleen Barney and Eleanor Rebard. Okay. And then also Colleen's the president of District English Learner Advisory Committee. Okay. And Eleanor is the treasurer of the California School of Employees Association. Did I get that one right? Treasurer. Okay. Tonight, what we'll do, as we've indicated, 1 to 2 minutes with a question, and we'll give each candidate an opportunity to go about and respond, but no more than 2 minutes. And Sandy will be our timekeeper for the evening. And then as we get to the evening, if we can exhaust the questions that are preset here, then we'll take questions from the audience, okay? All right. So, candidates, if you can introduce yourselves, starting with you.
Starting with me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Sandy, for putting this on tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate the opportunity, all of us candidates, to talk about the issues in Newport Mesa tonight. My name is Michelle Murphy. I am a mother of 2 boys in the school district. They're sitting up front. If they get a little loud, I apologize in advance. I'm a resident of College Park. I've been a resident of Costa Mesa for the last 10 years, and I work for United Way of Orange County. I'm the Associate Director of Advocacy and Health. I've been working in advocating for education and programs for families and children for the last 20 years, and I'm looking to be and hoping to be and working hard to be a parent advocate on the Board of Trustees and an advocate for the Costa Mesa schools.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Gina?
Hi there. Thank you all for attending tonight, and thank you all for participating and volunteering to be panelists, and thank you for putting this together. I'm very happy to be here at an unbiased forum that gives us the opportunity to communicate with one another. So my name is Gina Nick. I'm running for School Board and Trustee Area 4. I have had a medical practice in Newport Beach for about 8 years now, where I treat a lot of the NMUSD parents and students and have learned a lot about issues with school safety and communication with the board, which has inspired me to run. I have one daughter who's right here, Gabrielle. I've been volunteering and teaching leadership to children for the past 12 years, volunteering thousands of hours, and I'd love to see more leadership on the board and also teach leadership to our kids and help them to develop their own innate leadership skills and teach them how to build their self-esteem and protect themselves from bullies and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Michelle?
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Michelle Barto. I have 4 children in the district. I'm running for Trustee Area 5, which is the Peninsula, Newport Heights area, Castaways, Balboa Island, Lido Island. I really became interested in running for the school board a couple of years ago through my involvement with PTA, and had just seen how many great things that people could do in their own community. PTA was something that I was really passionate about, and so I've been the president the past year and this year at my children's school, and really just felt like there was so much more that I could do, and really was inspired to do more. I'm the vice president of the board at Pretend City Children's Museum, and I've seen how great nonprofits can work with the district and with educators, and I think there's a lot of great things that we can do by working together. I'm a web developer by background. I'm not from a traditional education background, but I think that that's going to be so great as our kids move forward in the 21st century, and an understanding of technology is so key to how they learn and develop. So I'm very excited to be part of this group, and I feel like the parents have had enough and they really want to change, so I'm excited to be part of that.
Thank you. Ashley?
Hello, my name is Ashley Anderson, and I am running to be a candidate in Trustee Area 7. That is most of Westside Costa Mesa. There are 4 schools that are in Area 7. It's Whittier, Pomona, Ray, and Wilson. I started to get involved. I've been working with a nonprofit for several years now, bringing in classroom volunteers to help with literacy, with mentoring, with resources that have not been able to be in place, and just a lot of parent empowerment. I work really closely with our school facilitators and provide for needs that come up that are kind of in the breach between what the district can provide and what some other nonprofits can provide. In my work of doing that, I've become an immigration advocate and really work closely with my neighbors. I was part of the redistricting committee, and I wasn't very impressed with the process that our citizens committee came up with. I was raised on the street that got divided in half, and so that really brought awareness to me of some of the deeper issues. For me, I was a teacher. I'm a credentialed teacher. Early literacy is something that's very important, and I think we need to be focusing more on preschool and getting parents involved at a younger age. Right now, we have a ton of kids that aren't reading by 3rd grade, and that is a huge thing for me. I have my master's in educational technology, and we really need people who think innovatively and know what modern education looks like. That's very important for our next generation.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll get into a round of questions right now. And safety seems to be a major issue throughout the country. And so as it relates to that, I'd like to ask you to think of the things that come to mind for you on a day-to-day basis. There are different points of views about what safety should be conducted within the schools. I'd like to ask each of you as a candidate, what your ideas about the school safety should be and what should be done to protect our children in the schools. Go ahead, Ashley.
One of the things that I feel like we need to be focusing more on is really screening and understanding where students are at a younger and younger age. We know a lot of violence that happens on school campuses is actually from students. We need to have children that are, in the same way we used to do vision screenings, we need to be having mental health screenings. Very often, our teachers are really starting to get trained and assessing risks, and we've done a great job. I'm part of the Community Alliance for the district, and I've been really impressed to hear what the district is doing this year, really going forward. But I feel like at a younger age, we need to see where kids are struggling, where the anxiety is stemming from, and how we can help that at a district level and with community partnerships.
Before we have you to answer that question, I'd like to get the panel involved here as well, too, from that standpoint. Would either one of you like to comment on the issue of safety? Patrice?
I'd like to know if any of you think that teachers should be armed.
No, I don't agree with that.
I do not think teachers should be armed in the classroom.
Every teacher I've talked to has said they do not want to be armed. No.
Absolutely not.
I have a question. Sure. I thought it was interesting, Ashley, starting with the younger ages, but I'm wondering how you guys feel the difference in safety should be dealt with from the elementary schools to maybe the secondary, the middle, and the high schools. Do you have an idea of different plans for the one group versus the other group?
So I think that one thing that could be fixed across all of them, just to start, is making sure that we have a comprehensive school safety plan that is in place at all schools. I think it's on paper, but I'm not sure that exists. I know a lot of schools, it doesn't match what is actually happening. So I think fixing that would be a good start. And then additionally, I think there's mental health, I think, is a huge part of safety, and I think you can do a lot with younger kids, just making sure that their environments are safe. And then with older kids, kind of giving a training to high school teachers who are probably the closest to our high school students to be aware of what mental health looks like, so that when a student confides in them, they know whether that student needs help or if they need a friend or if they have a serious issue.
Okay, Gina?
There are some issues as it relates to safety, physical safety, mental safety, emotional safety, that I think cross all ages. One of them is making sure we profile or have a system in place to profile people in the community and kids in school who may be introducing drugs into the area, for example, or who are the bullies, or who are exhibiting signs of emotional or mental distress. So I think there needs to be like a universal system in place because it affects all ages. When it comes to addressing the different, kindergarten versus high school or elementary school or whatnot, I think getting kids involved in focused community action committees from the schools to help identify and also solve the safety problems in their groups. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so I think getting the kids involved is really, really important, whether it's the teenagers or the young ones, because they have different issues as it relates to safety, Well,
thank you very much. Miriam, any thoughts?
I was coming in my mind last night. I was talking with a 17-year-old lady, and she told me like he saw his friend smoking marijuana in front of the teacher. So they think like behind the desk and smoking this thing. I feel like the teachers, they need to be. I know they're doing a great job teaching, but if the teachers get a little bit more involved in who you are and where you're coming from, be more empathetic. See, and not like just they're, I don't know, I feel like we can work pretty good if we have a system or a class or those, like the teacher can be more for the kids, like more empathetic. That's what we need.
Well, thank you. Michelle?
Oh, no, I was just going to say in terms of differentiating between high school and middle school, I've seen a couple different studies that have pointed out that wellness centers that you can develop in the middle school and high schools is an excellent way to create a safe place for students to come to. It might be staffed by a counselor or a school psychologist or maybe a nurse, but someplace on campus where kids can feel safe, where it's not necessarily, it doesn't say, this is the school, psychologist's office, and so everyone knows you're walking into it. But more of a safe place that kids can relax, they can talk freely with a teacher or a trusted advisor. There's been some great studies that have shown this is very beneficial, especially at the middle school level, and not that hard to implement and not that expensive. I'd also say there's also been some research done lately on opioid addiction and getting counselors that are trained in opioid addiction into the high schools. And I know that's a cost and probably more significant than wellness centers, but given that this is such a huge crisis in Orange County, I think it's something the district really needs to look into.
Thank you. And I think we'll talk about budget later on as well, too. Mm-hmm. Okay, from that same point. I'd like to just real quick, Cara?
I'm actually going to pass on the safety comment, and I'll wait for something later.
How about Eleanor? Do you have a comment?
I'm a district employee, and I've been a member of the Health and Safety Committee for approximately 12 years. I know that each school site has a comprehensive safety plan that's developed by staff, parents, and students of each site to make sure their site their needs are specific to that site. So there's going to be 32 different plans for safety, and it has to be individualized for each school, and I think that's important that all the candidates know there is a plan, and it's redeveloped every year, that the principal has to send it to the school board, and the school board needs to approve those, so that you're going to be, approving those site plans. So
it's currently in the budget, is what I'm hearing.
It's always been in the budget.
Okay, fantastic.
I'm sorry. I think one of the other issues is I think we have to define what we think safety is. I mean, in my head, I think about, school shootings and things like that, and I hear talk about drugs and alcohol or opioid addiction, and I'm not sure that everybody has the same concept of what a safety issue is and what we're trying to address with safety issues.
I would totally agree with you. As I thought about this when the questions were presented to me, I honestly felt the same way. It seems external from the environment. I know we do have issues internally when these have occurred as well, but you also have the external in terms of the perimeter of the school and keeping sure that non-students are not admitted into the premises. Okay, so yes.
So I'm part of a think tank, and actually just this past weekend, we were looking at what is the profile of a school shooter. Are there certain character traits that are specific to a school shooter? And there are some commonalities, not always, but there are some basic ones. And a big one is bullying. And so having the resources in place to really address students who are being bullied, and taking the stigma out of going and getting help. That's one example. But really, so that's, as it relates to physical safety, it also impacts mental and emotional safety and profiling that and having resources available to actually address the issue.
Right. Thank you.
And I would just say, as a school site council member, I approved our safety plan, but it was all about the physical safety. Mm-hmm. It didn't address any of the mental health issues.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
While you're thinking about your train of thought. I love what I'm hearing, great ideas, and I do think we need to have a lot more focus on emotional safety. I think we're missing the fact that all of our safety plans, and I'm one of the safety coordinators for my site, so I'm very aware of the plan that every school puts together, but it really is lacking in emotional safety, and I think that's where a lot of our issues stem from. So I love to hear that you're all talking about how to be proactive instead of reactive. I think that's a big shift that we need to make within the district, not just about safety, but other issues as well. So I'd love to hear more about different plans that you would look at in terms of ensuring kids' emotional safety.
Thank you. Eleanor, did you remember that?
I remembered. What are your feelings on the Raptor identification that's been implemented at each school? Do you know what it is?
Yeah, yes. It just was implemented. I guess since I'm holding the microphone.
Can you explain?
Okay, Raptor is identification process that has started just this year, that when a visitor comes to the office, they need to show identification, a driver's license or something. It's checked through a website for inappropriate people on the school campus. Then they're given a visitor's badge. Each school site can input restrictions on a parent. If this parent cannot take the child off the campus, if this parent is not allowed on the campus, each school site can put that information and be specific, and it's across the district. So if the parent has this issue at this site, it could be information at another school site.
Thank you.
So that's Raptor.
Yes, we heard about it, and it's been implemented at my son's school. And I certainly understand the safety concerns, and I'm happy about it addressing those. I just had a few concerns about parents who don't have a driver's license, or if they didn't have formal identification, and how those would be addressed. And so I have heard and read and seen that the district is addressing them, and my principal told me they're addressing those issues. But that was my first concern for parents who might not have identification that fits the criteria.
If the principal can verify and know that this parent has been there for 6 years, she can manually enter information. So it's not, you don't have to have it every time.
I was a little concerned about the fear that might create in some parents and communities.
But we'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I think unless there's any other comments relative to the safety, I mean, I'd like to go ahead and move on to our next question here. And this will give us ample time to discuss each of them a little bit in length here. So there's been a lot of conversation regarding the West Side, and I would say that, you know, we've had situations where we have lost a lot of our students to the Huntington Beach and other outlying school districts. I'd like to just ask each of you from the standpoint, and a lot of this can be attributed to the test scores and the fact that some of them are low. And we know that as parents and as homeowners, when people look to move into our communities, school test scores typically are part of the conversation. I think John's out there as one of our leading real estate individuals in the community here to know that it's very important. So what I'd like to ask each of you is that how would you circumvent the continued migration of our students out of the Costa Mesa Newport School District over into other outlying areas? And if you're elected, what's your plan to prevent that?
I've been talking a lot.
All right, Ashley.
Yes, there are a lot of things that we can do. Firstly, I would like to see when parents ask for something in their neighborhood school, that is really implemented. A lot of the parents that I have been working with have a huge desire for dual immersion. English-speaking parents want their child to be learning Spanish. Spanish-speaking parents want their children to learn English very well, and not just conversational Spanish. So there are certain assets that we can provide in Area 7 schools. We've been kind of throwing a pebble at some of these solutions. We need to have a full program of dual immersion at all 4 of the Area 7 schools. And I think it's also a matter of letting people come on the campuses and see the assets. Something that's very important to me is asset-based community development. It's seeing the strengths in a school. It's seeing what a neighborhood school is capable of and really fulfilling that potential. What some of the issues that are attached to the Area 7 schools is strictly based on money. They're very under-resourced. In a school district like ours that we get all of our money from property tax, we are still insisting on asking parents to have foundations to fund their child's education, like it's a private school. And so the schools that do not have that parental money base they're not able to provide for that. The district needs to be stepping in and doing that. There's a huge difference between funding schools equally and funding them equitably. There are under-resourced schools, the money is sitting in the budget, it needs to go to those schools. Parents are not stupid. They see that there's no money going to those schools. That needs to come first before we wonder why parents aren't attending.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Michelle.
Yes, so I am much better versed in the schools in my zone. But one thing I've noticed going through this process is how the tracks aren't K through 12 necessarily. You see a lot of schools that have these great opportunities for K through 6 at that specific school. Maybe they're not able to go all the way through with those things that they've learned. We just went to a school board meeting and they talked about the AVID program. So making sure that there are tracks that take kids all the way through K through 12 with whatever has been working well for them so that parents feel like this is a K through 12 solution. It's not a couple years, we'll go to Huntington and then come back. If you look at the whole path, I feel like a lot of parents would go, oh, they're thinking through and planning, and maybe it's the case and I'm missing it, but from what I've seen, I don't see that. And I feel like messaging that out to parents as well would give them pride in what's available in their community.
Well, I want to throw a little more of a caveat to this whole thing. I mean, obviously, you know, that migration out into some of the private schools as well, too. But again, test scores seem to play a factor in this. As a parent, you know, looking for academic success for your children, you want to make sure that they're being challenged as far as that's concerned. So keep that in mind in your responses as well, okay? Go ahead.
thinking about, if we go to the underlying cause, teacher morale is a core issue. If teachers are passionate and they're happy and they're getting the resources they need to teach the students are going to become inspired. They're going to want to learn. They're going to be excited about learning. And so I feel like, I know that just watching all of the board meetings, there are teachers that express concerns, and it feels like they are, those concerns fall on deaf ears. And so I think as a board member, I would be very interested in making sure that there's a two-way communication, and we're really focused on looking at what can we do to boost morale of the teachers so that they have what they need to inspire the students, to instill that love of learning so that they can, of their own accord, excel.
Well, thank you. Let me inquire with the panel here. Any thoughts, Cara, maybe?
You talked about test scores and, again, great ideas about improving enrollment in West Side schools. I started my career at Wilson. I taught there for 8 years, and so my heart really is in the West Side. Test scores, to me, are important on the one hand, and on the other hand, can be very dangerous. So I guess my question to you is, how do you evaluate a school's effectiveness and understand that its effectiveness globally, not just by looking at test scores? And how do you prevent the push for test scores from really exacerbating student stress that then goes right back to that emotional health? Right? It's all comes together. It's a tough situation. So I'd love to hear how you would talk about evaluating a school's effectiveness and test scores.
Well, yes, evaluating the schools a little differently. I think from the parents' perspective, it would be nice to see the district market these schools a little better. And I know this may sound, I don't know, a little cheesy, but it seems like these schools that aren't doing as well in these neighborhoods could be marketed better. The district has tried to implement programs to bring up these schools' enrollment with the neighborhoods around them, and they've been somewhat successful, but when I talk to my neighbors, they don't know about the programs that are successful in College Park. They don't know that kids are being offered opportunities at College Park that they're not getting offered in other schools. So I do really feel the district has done a poor job in marketing these schools and marketing to the parents and teachers, the families and the parents around those schools to sell the school. This is a great school. This is a fantastic opportunity for your child. And maybe explain to them, if they don't know why it's a fantastic opportunity for their child. I mean, dual immersion of Spanish and Mandarin doesn't necessarily, most people aren't exactly like, oh, that sounds like a great opportunity for my kid. But if you explain it to parents, really sold it to them in a way that they could understand that this is a career path for your child, I think the schools would do much better to try to get out into the community and become the neighborhood schools that become safer schools when the neighborhood surrounding the school is more involved.
So Ashley, as a board member, I mean, if you're elected to the position, obviously having a little bit of say-so in terms of rules throughout the community, but implementing that with a principal of those schools, I mean, I think that would be the next step. So your idea, from what I'm hearing, is marketing the school to make sure everyone's aware of its capabilities.
Because parents, I mean, we are all busy and we have our kids. It's hard to really dig deep into the data. You go onto great schools, you see the score, it immediately turns you off. Right. And that's obviously, I think, unfair to the school, it's unfair to the teachers, to a certain extent unfair to the district. So how do we combat that? How do we push a message that this school is really a great school, that your kid can have every opportunity at this school as they could at this school? And I think, we're all so busy these days, you kind of have to spell it out for people. You have to make the information easy to read and understand and kind of push it as much as possible. The 7 touches.
Rather than teaching to the test, teach the students, okay?
So anything we can do, I think, to heighten families' awareness of how great that school is in their neighborhood, that we'd all be better off.
Okay, Michelle, you had Ashley.
Yeah, one of the things too that I think is really wonderful is when we have parents that are willing to help other parents. I know, for instance, at Whittier Elementary, it is a bit of culture shock to go across town to go to Ensign and then go on to Newport Harbor. One of the things that I've seen that's been really beneficial is some of the 6th grade parents at Whittier have walked alongside the families that have just moved on to 7th grade at Ensign. They've introduced them to teachers. In previous years, I think 2 years ago, there were only 3 parents that were at back to school night at Ensign. Yeah. It's far away, it was at night, there are a lot of barriers, there wasn't transportation. So we need to just be thinking of innovative ways to make sure that parents are involved. And I think too, the test scores are really not reflective of what the children are capable of. We've had really bad math curriculum for several years. We just changed this year. We're supposed to get the test results this week, I believe, from last year. There was brand new math curriculum and brand new language arts curriculum. It is pretty certain that the scores are gonna go down. It was all new to the teachers, it was all new to the students, it was a different way of testing. So that information needs to be communicated to families. As I've been walking through a lot of the neighborhoods in Westside Costa Mesa, people just look at the report card thing, and that some of it is related to socioeconomic. The numbers go down. It's not just based on test scores. There's a lot of other factors, and so the district needs to be doing a better job of communicating why a school is what it is and what the pros are.
Thanks, Ashley. Any feedback from the panel? Patrice?
Yeah, this is all great stuff. You guys have wonderful ideas, and I totally agree with so many things I'm hearing about funding inequities and dual immersion and over-reliance on test scores, for sure. I'm just wondering also if you could comment about early intervention, because we lose kids so early on and they never catch up. So can you just address that issue as well?
Well, someone else wants to talk. That's funded by foundations oftentimes. So that's a huge...
And I was going to say, one of the big reasons that I became interested in the school board is our PTA funded an early intervention reading curriculum, which is so great that we were able to do that, and it really improved the way test scores and reading, but forget the test scores. Kids can actually read now, and they've moved up 2 years in a year where they were far behind. But we were able to pay for that, and it's great that we can. But if you can't, you should not. It shouldn't preclude you from learning to read.
So if you're in a school that doesn't have a big budget foundation, how do you address that?
At United Way, we work with different schools that are having problems with early childhood reading, with kids not being at grade level at 3rd grade. And statistically, if you're not reading at grade level at 3rd grade, you have a higher chance of dropping out of high school. And so our education programming has been focused on interventions for reading. So I would look to, for instance, if College Park or Sonora and Paularino didn't have a good foundation, who are the community partners we can reach out to who can bring that programming into the school that can help get these kids reading at grade level by 3rd grade. It's really, as Ashley said, with the 53% of kids not reading at grade level for the district, it's such a sad statistic, and it would be one of the things I'd want to work on the most.
I think it's a lot of things. One of my concerns right here, living in this area, is so expensive, right? And parents, they need to work like 3 jobs. So that's no bad parents, just they need to work and the kids are on the streets, right? So I believe in a free education. But, for example, in some schools, we need to pay for everything after program. My kids, I'm not allowed, I'm low income, so I'm DELAC parent, and I'm low income. So my husband works 3 jobs so I can be home with my kids. So, I called to the city and I asked for a scholarship because Newport Beach, I'm on Newport Heights. So I can go to Costa Mesa and sign my kids over there. But the problem is my kids, they want to be with friends. And And I understand, you know, they want to go to the same class, so they don't have the same opportunity. So I don't know, guys, if you can do something. You know, I try to reach people, nobody hear me, but maybe in the future, right, we can do something, because I believe we can have a free education for our kids, and I wishing, you know, here in Orange County, the minimum can be up a little bit more, because if we don't need to work like 3 or 4 jobs. We can be with our families. We can be with our kids and support them.
Thanks, Miriam. One of the things I think about from that standpoint, it's almost like shopping. I mean, we typically, for what of our commodities are, I see the same thing happening with parents looking for the best school to prepare their students for the future and for college. And I think that if they were all equal, it would be fantastic, but the reality is that they are not, and we understand that. Budget plays a tremendous role in that component as well, and we'll talk about a little bit about the budget in terms of how Newport Mesa Unified School District is funded. So is there anyone else that would like to chime in on the issue? Yes.
I think,
go ahead, Gina.
Sure. Looking more closely at public-private partnerships, so there are a lot of wonderful nonprofits. I happen to be part of one that's been around for 20 years that teaches leadership to kids, and we have mentors that literally, you know, they'll tutor the kids, you know, they'll do early intervention programs, and it's all free to the kids, and it's a nonprofit group. So looking more, I know Ashley and I have talked about this quite a bit, really engaging with nonprofit organizations in the community that are qualified. If we truly partner with them, we can elevate any schools that need to be elevated. So not solely relying on the school. The schools are overburdened, the teachers are overburdened, but you know, getting into the community and bringing in that nonprofit sector in a way that's healthy and makes sense to help all of the kids. So.
Well, I think it's important to have a viable interest, and from that standpoint of having parents on the board that are really close to the issues from that standpoint and have a vested interest in it. Any other comments before we move on to the next question?
The thing for me also with West Side Schools is one thing that I think and I value, and I know most people in Costa Mesa do, is community. And so when you have one street and you have kids that are going to 6 different schools on one street, it breaks up community. For me, that's something that I value, and I think most parents do. So that is another piece where if we have kids that are able to walk to their neighborhood school again, we have kids in Westside Costa Mesa that are bused all over the place. If you're on Wallace at 8 a.m. in the morning, if you are near Wilson, there are buses everywhere. People are not going to their neighborhood school. That's not an option. So at the district level, I would like to see some of the school attendance boundaries change so parents can again walk their children to school.
Thanks, Ashley. All right, what I'd like to do now is to proceed to our next question, the big one. This is pertaining to budget, okay? Most of you know that our budgets for the Newport Mesa Unified School District are acquired through property taxes in the community. So the school board is funded with those taxes no matter what the attendance rates are. So my question to you is this, you as a board member, do you have any idea as to how much money is allocated each year for the Newport Mesa Unified School District? And what are your plans and priorities as a school board member from the standpoint of really supporting and for those lower income communities where they are suffering with low attendance because of the issues that we talked about, of helping getting funding to those communities?
The budget's about $300 million a year. And actually one of the, I'm embarrassed to say, but actually one of the worst attendance rates is in a Newport Beach school, not a lower income school. And so I think that approaching the problem as that, we have to look at it in a couple different ways. We need to look at why students aren't going to school if they have the means to be there, from one hand. And then additionally, why aren't they there? And I was talking with a friend of mine who started Operation Bright Smile, and he said that he found through all his work that one of the biggest reasons that children don't attend school is because of poor dental care. because they get a toothache, because they're up all night, they don't go to school in the morning, and then they go to the nurse's office and they have a headache. So he said, you know, we haven't really focused on Newport Mesa at all, and we'd love to come this way. It made me think, let's look at what these underlying low attendance issues are, not just from the top, but let's get in there, go to the nurse's office and see, why are these students not here? Where are these students? And you can do internal surveys, but in general, these secretaries and the different people who work at the office probably have a really good idea of why students aren't there. We can use that data to figure out why students aren't coming, whether it's dental care, whether it's they went to Disneyland that day. There's all kinds of different issues, and kids need to go to school so they can learn.
Well, thank you very much. Gina, you got me?
So yeah, the budget is over $300 million. It's based on a bond that was approved in 2005. I have a question about, in 2016, there was a community oversight committee that was formed to really look at where the dollars are going and to have accountability for where those dollars are actually going. My understanding is they were supposed to meet, 4 times a year, quarterly, and really look at, what's happening? Where is the money being spent? Is it being spent equitably across the schools and appropriately? And, in 2016, I don't think there was a single meeting. There might have been one meeting, 2014, 17, 18. And so as a board member, that's your responsibility to make sure that that committee is meeting and is held accountable. So my focus is on making sure that we are accountable for the dollars that we have to spend and know where that money is going and why.
Thanks, Gina.
Actually, before we move to the next person.
Go ahead, then.
So that committee is, the Citizens Oversight Committee was for the Measure F bond money. So I was actually the chairman of the Citizens Oversight Committee and attempted many times to get meetings taken care of, set up. We can't do business if we can't get a quorum, and frankly, the group was way too large to get a quorum for every single time. My concern is, and one of my questions for you guys is that, so again, that was only, it was not for the full budget. It was only for the Measure F money. But beyond that is, what do you do when you're receiving information from the district that isn't actually accurate? So I saw a meeting, I watched it online, and I saw where one of the staff came to the board and said, the oversight committee is good with not meeting anymore. We just need to shut it down. And the board approved that. Well, I've got plenty of emails where I was asking to have meetings. I was asking to do those things. So one of my questions for you guys is that my experience has been that I don't always get accurate information when I ask for it. What processes are you planning on going through to ensure that you are actually getting accurate information? And then Eleanor was on the committee with me.
I know that there has been one meeting this year for the COC, and there's another meeting scheduled for November. They must have the quorum. If they don't have a quorum, it's an informational only meeting. Right. And it doesn't count as a meeting. But they do a report.
Could I interject just real quick? And the meeting is comprised of lay people? Or
okay. Originally, under Measure A, there were, I believe, 17 members. So you had to have a quorum. Measure F, I believe it's down to 7.
Okay.
And it's a retiree group, nonprofit group, different, but no district employees. They were on the first committee, but not on the second.
Well, I'm with Colleen. I think you get too large of a body of individuals. Quorums are very difficult to compile, and from that standpoint. So I would honestly think that moving forward here, that has there been any thought about potentially having someone from the district part of that committee? Or is a conflict of interest?
The meeting is now chaired by Tim Holcomb. I don't know.
He's
the
facilities.
The COO. Chief Operations Officer. He replaced Paul Reed. So if you knew Paul Reed, he was the new person.
Okay.
There is an audit every year. All the records for checks, for invoices, for everything is audited by an outside auditor, and that's presented at school board.
And I still have the same question. What's the process that you guys are going to go through?
So let's switch it back over to our candidates here then. Michelle, you've got the mic. Did you have...
Sure. No, just to address that initial budget question about the $300 million, about 85% of it is being spent on teachers and salary and personnel, as it should be, to keep qualified and exceptional teachers like we have in Newport Mesa, which means the 15% that's left really does need to be scrutinized, and a lot of questions need to be asked about it because we have very little money to play with. So, and not even play, but how do we make decisions based on infrastructure needs, based on additional needs that the district has, transportation, all of the other issues that come up. So to me, what I see when I look at the board is they don't ask any questions, and it's frustrating as a parent. I think it's frustrating as a community member that for certain things that come up, like you're saying, nobody says a word about it. And I, in my role as an advocate, I have no problem asking questions, and I want to be up on that dais asking a lot of questions. And I think the rubber stamping, the 7-0 votes, is a travesty. It doesn't do the district any good. It doesn't benefit anyone in my mind, and it doesn't show that there's been thoughtful discussion on each of these items. So I would like to see any sort of audit that could be done on that 15% that's left. Where are we overspending? Where are we underspending? Where can we reallocate resources to do the things that we'd like to see done at the schools?
Okay, the other 15%, you're buying every school book throughout the district, and with the math, you know, we bought one series of math books and then the next series of math books. English language learners is a new book for all the grade levels. So there's a lot, and 4% of the $300 million is earmarked for facilities upkeep. So there's also that part of it too.
Thank you. Cara, did you? Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that we got back to Colleen's question, because that was actually the big pressing question on my mind for the candidates, because I think it goes beyond just the funding and the budget issues, but I think the decision-making process in the district really needs to be examined, and how are decisions made, who is participating in those decisions, how are those decisions communicated, and how do you know that you're getting all the information you need?
Correct.
Because I believe that certainly many of the board members make a decision that they think is the best decision for their constituents.
Well,
but how do you make sure that you have all of the information?
And I would say, as a parent, I'm at school. I talk to teachers. I talk to my principal. I see staff members. It's on a daily basis. It's something that you can actually, as a parent, go talk to the people involved in the process and find out what they think is really going on. And I don't know, you know, the trustees don't have any children in the district, so they're not involved on that day-to-day level. As we like to say, we have skin in the game. Yeah. So I think that just brings a different level of inquiry and investigation into what's really going on, is we have access to the folks who are actually doing all this work, who have to implement these programs, who have to make the adjustments.
Gina, do you have a comment? Yes.
One of the biggest problems I see is the lack of communication, real communication, you know, real listening and communicating back and forth. And so one of the ideas I'd come up with was putting together citizen action committees comprised of teachers. You know, it could be the principal involved if available, community members, parents, and students. And that group is assigned a task. For example, what, you know, what's going on with that committee, you know, and why isn't it meeting, et cetera, and solving that problem. And so there's another level of accountability between the board and the concerned teachers, parents, students, community members. I think that would help to open up the path of communication and actually solve these problems.
Thanks, Gina. So Michelle?
Sure. Okay. And I was going to add, too, that that is both the biggest privilege and the biggest challenge that I know that I will face is asking why, because when I'm taking my kids to school and we've got a new math curriculum and I'm walking around, I know that a bunch of parents are going to say, why is this happening? And I'm going to need to know why and be able to give them that answer because I'm there with them going all the way through. So for me, it's again, using resources in the community, parents, business owners, teachers, reaching out to them when decisions are made, but also knowing that if I don't, when I take my kid to school on Tuesday, like, they're going to ask, and I better have an answer.
I think, too, it's a matter of full exposure of what the budget is to the public. The taxpayers are the ones that are funding our district. One of the things that has been troubling for me is I try and find out, I've been looking through the budgets for over the past 3 years. There's just an overview sheet for Title I funds. I want to know what is covered. I want to know where all of that money is going. In the unrestricted funds section of the budget, we have gone up $70,000 and it's going up more. It's projected to be more. When we're looking at the differences between Wilson, that was able to raise $11,000 from their PTA and over $300,000 at Anderson, that's not millions of dollars. I want some of that unrestricted fund money to go into our West Side schools. It's just sitting there for the future, which is great to be fiscally conservative. However, we have over half of our kids who are unable to read. We need to be using our funds to educate.
Okay, so we've talked about the budget. Let's talk about if you had control of the budget and at this point becoming a school board member, what would be your first priority to implement from a funding standpoint?
I mean, my first priority, so mental health and counseling is a huge priority for me, but additionally evaluating how we're being frugal and how we can better save money, and if there's things that we can do to use our community partners. So I don't know that I necessarily have a priority beyond wanting to make sure that our kids can read, that our kids feel safe, those kinds of things. How can we do that without spending additional money, and how can we take the money that we have and make sure that it's being used frugally?
Gina, same question to you, Gina. Your first priority.
First priority would be looking at the salaries and the bonuses and the raises and seeing where we can trim the fat first, because I imagine we'll have a bigger pot of money to work with. And then from there, I would be most focused on school safety.
Michelle.
Yeah, school safety and making sure that all of the schools are safe and that we have a district-wide safety plan, not an individual school site plan, one that can be implemented district-wide, that I think everyone in the community is well aware of what that entails. And certainly, I think an audit of where the funds are going in that 15% that is left over. You know, you read a lot about the lawsuits that are filed against the district and the fights that they get in the legal battles that they're ensnared with, and how can we stop those? How can we mitigate those? Where can we trim some of our legal costs and maybe put some of these fights to rest? I would like to definitely see some of that happen first off.
Okay, Ashley, you didn't get an opportunity on that one.
Yes, my #1 priority would be for the money to go directly to the classrooms. I am part of the Schools Foundation, which provides money for teachers who are applying for $1,000 grants. We have tons of teachers in our district asking for $1,000, $1,000, $1,000. Wouldn't it be great if at the beginning of the year or in the summertime a teacher could say, or a school community of teachers could decide, here are our top 10 priorities, can we please get these funded? We have teachers who are spending personal time writing grants. Some of those grants don't get funded. We really need more money going directly into our classrooms that will benefit our teachers and our students. To me, it's very simple.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel, is there anyone else that would like to chime in on this issue relative to the budget and what you've heard from the candidates? No? Patrice.
It's not exactly a budget question, okay. But because you're talking a lot about bringing in fresh eyes to, hold the district accountable and make sure the money is spent appropriately to benefit our kids. I'm just wondering, though, you know, obviously there's some benefit to experience and institutional knowledge. So I'm wondering if you could address that, and also what your position is on term limits. It's an issue that's been brought up in the past. It's not common in school boards, but it does happen sometimes. Is that something that anybody would favor? What do you think about that?
You read my mind. That's number 4 on my list here.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think it's great. Just a great segue, because it's very appropriate, because I also have that concern because of just my previous experience with the interface with the community and the school board, that, again, having a vested interest in it and a dog in the fight, that after a while you seem to have blinders on relative to the day-to-day occurrences that are going on. So question to you then, Ashley.
Yes. I am 100% in support of term limits. I think that we have seen, we have had some amazing people that have dedicated their lives to service, and that is really admirable. But we need people who know what modern education looks like. I was born in the year that one of our trustees just retired. We have people who that don't know what necessarily a modern education has looked like. She did an amazing job, but we need people who have fresh eyes. Institutional knowledge is really important. We need to be providing a pipeline of leadership in the same way that a big company, if you know the CEO is getting older and is going to retire, you pass that knowledge along, hopefully to 2 or 3 people, maybe a whole team of people. And so I would like to see that. I am a big advocate of 12 years. I think that is a long time. If someone goes from kindergarten to 12th grade with their child, 12 years seems like a good amount to me.
Thank you, Ashley. Michelle?
Yes, I too am pro term limits. I think that they should absolutely be in place. I think that if the decisions that are made are documented, a new school board member who does their research will have a really good idea of what's gone on over the past several years, and they can always reach out to board members as they're retiring for that information. It's not lost, but I think that a set of fresh eyes, and you know, if you hear the same question every single year 300 times from students asking, by the time you get to that 12th, 15th year, many more years of service, you just can't respond in a way that is fair to the person asking that question. Maybe you really want to, but you just can't because you've heard that question so many times.
Thank you very much. Gina?
So 12 years, that strikes a chord. My opponent ran on term limits for 12 years. This is her 12th year. And so I think term limits of 12 years is appropriate. I think what would make the most sense is, as Ashley was saying, you know, if you're on the board, mentor some new people to come in so you have a transfer of knowledge, you know, and there's a mentorship program there. So if I'm on the board and I determine maybe I'll be there for 2 terms, at the end of the first term, I'm going to be looking at who is interested, who's capable, and who I can transfer the valuable knowledge to so they can do the very best job for the district and ultimately for our kids.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yes, I agree with actually everything everyone has already said. I don't have much more to add to that. I was happy to see the initiative on the ballot. I'm voting for term limits. I was actually a little disappointed to see that you could return after a break from the board. I was disappointed to see that.
Well, our governor did too.
So I would like to maybe see how we might change that in the future, because I really do believe that 12 years, three terms is plenty.
Well, thank you guys. I mean, really, and Patrice, really, thank you very much for segueing into that. But the panel, what's your thoughts? I mean, from the standpoint of term limits.
I think it's critical. I have worked for...
Could we pass your mic?
I've worked for the district for 20 years. This is my 20th year. And several of the school board candidates have been on the board since my entire career, which is, I mean, absolutely no criticism to them. It's an incredible sacrifice, and they're all so dedicated to have given so many years of service. But we have got to have fresh eyes. There are so many new things coming down the pike, and education has changed so much that it's really critical that those fresh eyes are with us, and as all of you alluded to, that you've got a system in place to kind of pass the baton. So.
Thanks, Cara. Eleanor? No? Colleen?
I agree with term limits. I think that one of my biggest concerns and what I'm really interested in, in having a school board is, to me, the lack of term limits. At some point, you blend the relationship between the board and the district in a way that, if you know this person for 32 years, it's very hard to, have a good way of asking why, right? And so Michelle's question, and so I guess I have a little bit of a statement and a little bit of a question, which is, my statement is, for me personally, I think that the relationship between the board and the district is that you're supposed to be setting the policy. So I love Michelle saying, when someone asks me why, I want to know the reason why. I want you guys to be telling them why, telling the district what it is that your vision is. And so I'm wondering what you think about the relationship between the district office, the personnel, the superintendent, and the board itself. Kind of part of my term limits.
And just my thoughts on that, because I think we all know that coming into a new role is like going into, the Senate. You go in and you have these great ideas, and you get there and you realize that you've got to play the role once that takes place. So you're going to have to be very firm in terms of your decisions, in terms of getting things changed, and having a voice loud enough that you can garner a lot of support from your other colleagues on the diocese as far as that's concerned. So
that's my leadership style has always been like that. To go in, you don't want to chop off heads right off the bat and scare everybody. I find that to not be quite as effective, but certainly to be open-minded and to ask a lot of questions, a lot of questions. And I feel like as a new trustee, I should be able to do that, and I should be able to get answers. I should be able to say, I don't understand how this works. Can you explain it to me? Why are we doing this way? What is the research? What's the data? What's the background on this? So I really do think it'll give us a whole different perspective on what's going on at the district, because we are going to be coming in saying, why is it this way? Why has it been this way for 20 years? I don't think the superintendent needs to be my best friend. I think it needs to be a cordial relationship, obviously, but he ultimately works for the Board of Trustees. So when I have an issue and I have a problem at the board level, he's the one who is supposed to take care of it for us and to come back with truthful answers. And I'm prepared to keep asking questions until I get the truth to the answer.
So I'll start by saying it's a lot easier to be negative than it is to be positive. So, going into I've been a consultant my whole life as part of my professional life. And when you go into a company and you've got fresh eyes and everybody's been, laboring and working hard and blood, sweat, and tears, and you're there to go find out what's wrong, And so looking at what is right and what has been done really well by the trustees and by the superintendent too. But just like we teach the kids, some of the traits of a leader include listening, patience, kindness, tolerance. Truly implementing those traits at the board level, I believe, will help to establish healthy relationships between the superintendent and the board and the district and the administrators, so we can get some stuff done for our kids.
Thank you very much, Gina. Michelle?
So I think I've been a consultant as well, and usually the way I first start is by understanding the budget, getting a really understanding all the stuff that's been going on for several years, asking why. And sometimes you do find that the stuff that has happened that you don't agree with actually has a good reason, but the community deserves to know if decisions have been made, why they have been made. So I do believe that the board hires the superintendent, and so to that end, we need to approach it as an employee relationship, but also with an understanding that there's people and kids out there and understanding why decisions have been made.
Thanks, Michelle.
Ashley.
No, Ashley, I was thinking.
We have two other Michelles. I'm Ashley. So one of the things for me, I feel like the institutional knowledge, going back to that, I don't think it's you've been on the board and that's it. I've actually been able to build a great relationship with Tom Egan, who one of his passions is early childhood education. He was a trustee in Area 7. I think, and with Wendy Lease, who was also a trustee in Area 7, that information is there. Just because somebody is not on the board at that current time, we can still use them as a resource, and I think it's important to do so. It's vital to do so. And for me, what I see is really important is just respecting the people who come in front of the board. There has been a lot of animosity in recent years. I've talked to lots of teachers. I've witnessed people from the community coming to the board, and the board is not as respectful as they should be. I will say it gently. And that kind of environment is toxic. We're representing 22,000 students. About that, we need to be able to hear divergent opinions and come up with a collaborative approach. That's what a community public education system should be doing. So I would like to see that take place.
And thanks, Ashley. I was thinking Michelle earlier. Okay, well, what we'd like to do right now, because we've gone through the 4 questions that we had set aside, I'd like to go ahead and ask the audience if you have questions for the candidates prior to us closing out our session for the evening. Is there anyone that would like to present a question to the candidates? Raise your hand.
You have a
okay.
I'm Kimberly Clater, teacher here in Newport Mesa. This is my 20th year, too. Used to be a teacher at Estancia. Now I teach at Corona Del Mar. I live in Area 7, okay? And my question, and it's about Area 7, but it's really for the other candidates. We heard from our DELAC president, right? All right, Miriam. She was talking about her husband has several jobs, so she can stay home and take care of the kids. And I understand, and I know, that many of my neighbors have several jobs. As an elected leader, you might be asked to support some kind of, I don't know, state bill. You know, even though you may not be voting on something like that, you might be asked to support something that helped our community lift up its workers so they don't have so many jobs, right? What is your position, or what are your ideas about lifting up our community outside of the school so we can have communities where you don't have families that have to, you know, live multi-families in a house and you know, have multiple jobs? And I also want to know about class size.
I'll go. So I have been involved with learning center programs on the west side, and I think that part of that starts with giving those families the support that they need to know that their kids are getting tutoring if they're not available to be around them. One additional thing that we worked on at Newport Heights and didn't get very far on was to figure out additional after-school programs for kids if they wanted to be part of that. So something that I hope to do is figure out a way, even in the Newport schools, for those who want additional activities that they see. I think, I mean, personally, my biggest budget line item is activities for my children. And I feel like if we can help parents in that way, they can have access to the sports and different things that they would like their kids to be involved in, and take some of the heat off of them for providing for that enrichment.
Anyone else like to chime in on that? Yes, Gina?
So having resource centers available in the community. I'm being asked to bring a resource center from San Diego and model it here in Orange County as an example. And it's to treat mental health issues and take the stigma away from it. But there's childcare available for free. There's a kitchen teaching kids and adults how to cook. There's like an after-school type component to it that teaches leadership to kids. And I really think community resource centers will lift up the community, take the load off of the parents, take off some of the financial pressures with childcare, et cetera. And I think that's one way. I really feel like it's got to be a community involvement with a nonprofit component to it as well to help elevate the community.
Anyone curious?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there's not a lot that we could vote on as a board member to truly address those issues. Obviously, affordable housing is one of them. A living wage is another. Some of those issues are going to be addressed in the state budget in the next couple of years. Or I mean, with laws that the governor has already signed in the next couple of years, and there is actually a few state bills that were signed to address the affordable housing issue. I think on a personal note, that the community coming together and understanding that affordable housing is a true issue for all of us. Where are my kids going to live? Where is the affordable housing for them? Not even just, you know, the kids today coming out of college, where are they going to live? So I think all of us need to kind of wrap our heads around the fact that we need to be in support of affordable housing and more housing in our community that can help bring down those prices. There is state and federal funding for after-school programming and before-school programming, and I would like to see if we have exhausted all of those resources, because the #1 expense for families is childcare. Well, if it's not housing, it's then childcare. Well, I mean, in Orange County, it's probably housing and then childcare. So have we gone after every grant? Have we found every program that can possibly fund from at the federal and the state level expanded after school and before school programming? Because that's where you can really help a family and you can give them some benefits, or at least take a little bit of the burden off.
Thank you very much. Ashley?
Thank you. Yes, in our budget, there's actually a substantial amount of money that is supposed to be going towards parents. One of the things that's been concerning to me right now is ESL is actually outsourced. Huntington Unified is paying and offering, well, we're paying Huntington Unified to offer our parents ESL classes. Is that a value our district has? I think they're showing that that is not the case. I would like to see on all of our Title I campuses, parent cohorts. We need parent empowerments. We need parents that feel safe on the campus, that feel included in decision making, that starting at the youngest ages, they feel that they are welcome on the campuses. I really cannot state enough that we have some great programs. I love that we have access for our kids to be at school until 6 o'clock, but we need to have accountability to some of those programs. Literally, a child could be on campus from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. and at night. So that is great for childcare, but we need to be making sure that that is academically relevant to them. We have some schools that get out at 1:15 or 1:30 on Wednesdays. I would like to see that space used with mentorship and a lot of things that would benefit the whole community. There's just a lot of creative ideas, and I think as we've all talked about, we need some fresh ideas to come, especially to our most under-resourced neighborhoods.
Thanks, Ashley. Panel, anyone would like to interject at all?
Could I go back to the budget? Could each of you, I'm a numbers person, your personal and or professional knowledge on how to review, oversee, and manage the budget, find the mistakes, find, okay, just find the mistakes. So that area.
Yes, as a business consultant for 5 years, I spent a lot of time looking at budgets and reviewing them for different companies in all different sectors, and additionally have worked on PTA as treasurer.
So as a business consultant for the past 20 years and owning and operating my own medical practice, it's what you have to do. You have to ask questions. You have to trim the fat anywhere you can. You have to be tough when looking at line items and determining where the dollars are going and if it's justified and if there's another way.
Yeah, I would just say as a nonprofit professional for the last 20 years, I've always operated on very thin budgets, very lightly resourced budgets, and have had to stretch a dollar as far as it can possibly go. I've also been a grant writer and a consultant, and there are certain terms that you look for when you know money is being hidden or kind of pocketed away where it might not need to be. So yes, I think we are all going to take a closer look at the budget, I think, from all of our various perspectives, and probably find some places where there's some additional funding and where some funding could be cut.
They're usually called miscellaneous.
Yeah, miscellaneous, yes.
Always the largest.
Okay, Ashley, and then we'll see if there's any more questions.
Similarly with Michelle Murphy, I have been a nonprofit executive and have also written a lot of grants. And so I have a lot of experience with that as well. But also I've looked through our budgets, our Newport Mesa budgets for several years, and that's where I've seen there's certain amounts that are projected, and then there's certain amounts that are funded, and sometimes those numbers are extremely far off, so where does the money that's in between go? I would like answers. A one-page overview doesn't often cover that. So I have been doing that, and I think we need to have a budget that is more comprehensive. It's pretty big, but it's also in 16-point font or so. So I would like to see a budget that many of us that have experience reading and reviewing those, it's more comprehensive.
Well, forecasting, and actual spending, forecasting, speculating. I mean, a lot of times, but unfortunately, I think it happens a lot. You start looking at organizations, the more that you can forecast, and from a funding standpoint, to be able to get that, and you kind of work backwards with it. But I really hold and thank each of you for what you're talking about relative to the accounting aspect of it, because that's truly what needs to be done. I honestly believe that the school district has a lot of money, and it's not necessarily being spent in the wisest way. If there's not another question from the floor, because, okay, there is a question.
I'm brand new to this area. We've been building a house for 20 months, and we just got to move in. So I'm very interested in what's happening with the school board because it impacts my grandchildren. I will make a statement about working multiple jobs. When my mother arrived in the United States, she spoke no English. She worked and worked and worked to make sure she had 6 children. I speak 5 languages. So again, that's what parents do. We work however much we have to take care of our children. My mother was a full-time homemaker, and my parents never asked anyone to foot the bills and all of this other stuff. We all have ancestors that came over here on a boat. You got off the boat, you got a job. All right, it's that simple. Nowadays, everybody wants something for nothing, and you don't treasure it because you didn't work for it. And the thing is, I'm a retired woman. I'm 70 years old. My husband's 81 with Alzheimer's. We're here because we want to be near our family. This is an outrageously expensive area to live in. And we're on a fixed income. Where do you think I'm going to get the money to pay for additional taxes that isn't going to impact us negatively? There's a real question in that. Because I think we've worked hard all our lives. We should be able to keep our home and live comfortably because we did that. And I want to help children. Absolutely, it's necessary. But you can't do that and take away from all of us who have worked our bums off to be retired. That's just not fair, because you know what? The books don't say, oh, if you're 80, we're going to give you a break. It just doesn't happen that way. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are on that.
Well, and if I could just clarify too, because I think that, the question to the school board quite naturally comes to be a financial issue in finding the funding. There is, speaking of the money that's allocated right now by the taxes that are collected, which kind of ties into your question. And I'm going to present this because as school board members, if you're elected here, the issue of legislative and the taxes increases, comes about, and some of this also through the city and the state. So what are your plans and your thoughts about enhancing the relationships between the city councils of Newport Beach and the city council of Costa Mesa and unifying with them to try and implement some of the ideas and things that you may be bringing as a new candidate to the table?
So I've seen firsthand how a good relationship with a school and school district and city council can improve just even the facilities and the working relationship with the school. So I think it's very important for school board members, administrators, all of us who are part of the community to build a strong working relationship with the city council.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Dell.
I just want to put your mind at ease, ma'am. I don't believe anyone up here is advocating to increase your property taxes. I think you're safe there. The dollars that I'm talking about at the state and federal level are already allocated for these programs, and sometimes it's just a matter of the district going after that funding that is already available. So no one here is advocating to increase your property taxes, so I want you to feel better about that. There is definitely the issue of infrastructure, however, and if there is another bond that is necessary to improve infrastructure, and that would certainly be a conversation for another day. No one up here that I know of, that I can see, is advocating to increase your property taxes.
Well, listen, I think at this point, we're about to wrap up and bring things to a close. I'm really very excited from the standpoint of coming in and being able to listen to the candidates. We've touched on quite a few really high priority issues as far as that's concerned. And I think, you now know them better. They have a good feel from each other as to what their plans and directions will be. And for our panel, for, their involvement and participation as well, too, because, again, we wanted to make this conversational. The interaction back and forth was just great. I'm really hoping each of you the best success in your campaigns, that you are, a new face on the diocese at the school board to help bring about change for the community, because I think it's for the betterment of everyone here and our children as well as our grandchildren from that standpoint. So Sandy, we're going to wrap things up again. I'd like to thank you for bringing us together here. Katrina, I'm sorry, Wendy, Katrina's gone. Wendy, and for really everyone else who was in participation this evening. I really want to thank you. And again, give yourselves a big round of applause. And we look forward.